My own mother told me I was a disgrace, and she said it like she was doing me a favor. You never forget the moment your heart stops beating for approval. For me, it was that evening. The air smelled like perfume and secrets, and everyone in my family was dressed in their best lies. I remember standing by the mirror, fixing my dress, when she leaned close enough for her whisper to sting my ear. "Don't speak too much tonight, Emma. You'll embarrass us all." Her voice was soft, but it cut like glass. I smiled, pretending her words didn't pierce through every fragile part of me. That's the thing about growing up in a family obsessed with appearances. Pain isn't allowed to show. You just hide it behind polite laughter and a glass of watered-down respect. I used to believe that silence meant strength. That if I stayed calm, obedient, invisible, I'd earn their love. But over the years, silence turned into a prison. My mother's approval was the key, and she never once offered it. She saved all her affection for my sister, Sophia, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. Every compliment I craved, every smile I hoped for, went to her. People outside thought we were the perfect family, the Blakes, graceful and respectable. But behind those smiles were secrets we never dared to touch. My secret was that I was breaking, quietly, under the weight of being the disappointment no one wanted to claim. That night, I told myself I'd behave. I'd keep my head down, just one more time. But something in me snapped when I saw the way she looked at me, not as her daughter, but as the flaw she wished she could hide. I didn't know it then, but that whisper, "You'll embarrass us all," would become the line that changed everything. Because that night, I decided, if I was going to embarrass them, I'd do it with the truth. And the truth was about to destroy the picture-perfect family they worshipped. They say every family has its golden child, and its ghost. In our house, my sister Sophia was the golden one. And me? I was the shadow that followed her too closely. We lived in a 2-story house that looked perfect from the outside, white fence, flower beds, laughter spilling out on Sunday evenings. People always said, "The Blakes are such a respectable family." I used to smile when I heard that, pretending I was proud to be one of them. But inside, I knew what it really meant: appearances first, truth later. My mother, Linda, was the queen of appearances. Every morning she wore her perfume like armor, every word she spoke rehearsed for admiration. "A lady's worth," she always said, "is measured by how the world sees her." My father, Mark, barely spoke. He just nodded through her commands, reading his newspaper like silence was a form of peace. Maybe it was, for him. For me, it was punishment. Sophia and I grew up in the same house, but it always felt like she got the sunlight, and I got whatever warmth was left. She was dazzling, confident, charming, everything my mother wanted in a daughter. People adored her without trying. Me? I was told to try harder, speak softer, and never forget that a woman's respect depends on how others perceive her. I tried. I really did. I helped Mom in the kitchen when Sophia refused. I ran errands, handled chores, stayed quiet when arguments flared. Every time I thought maybe she'd notice, she'd glance past me like I wasn't even there. One evening, during a family dinner, I remember passing my mother a dish. She didn't even look up. "Sophia, darling, could you pour the wine?" she said, though I was sitting right beside her. Everyone laughed, as if I'd disappeared mid-meal. I forced a smile, but my hand trembled on the table. It was always like that. My mother praised Sophia for the smallest things: a new dress, a polite joke, a compliment from a guest. But when I achieved something real, she dismissed it with a simple, "That's nice, dear." Then came the family reunion, Grandma Rosie's 75th birthday. My mother turned it into a grand event, the kind that looked more like a movie than a gathering. She spent weeks planning every detail: the seating chart, the decorations, the speeches. "We'll show everyone that the Blake family still knows how to uphold its name," she said proudly. I didn't expect to be part of any of it. But one afternoon, she called me into the living room, her voice sugar-sweet and sharp as glass. "Emma, you'll give a short speech for Grandma," she said. "Something respectful. Simple. Don't try to be emotional or dramatic. Just safe." Safe. That word stung. I knew it didn't mean thoughtful. It meant don't ruin this for us. I nodded anyway. "Of course, Mom." Later that night, as I sat in my room, I caught a glimpse of Sophia through the window, laughing with Ryan, my ex-fiancé. The same man who once promised to marry me before vanishing with nothing but excuses.
My stomach twisted, but I said nothing.
Because in this family, silence was survival. Still, something in my mother's eyes during that week felt different. She was nervous, secretive, whispering with Aunt Carol in corners and pretending it was about decorations. But every time I walked in, they'd go quiet.
I told myself I was imagining it.
That maybe, for once, things would go right. But deep down, I felt it, that strange, sinking feeling in my chest that always came before a storm. That night, as I practiced my speech in front of the mirror, I paused halfway and stared at my own reflection. My smile looked forced. My voice, hollow. "Just don't embarrass us," Mom's voice echoed in my head. I didn't know it yet, but that speech wasn't going to be about Grandma. It was going to be about every secret this family had buried under its perfect smiles. And when the truth came out, it wouldn't just ruin dinner, it would destroy everything they'd built on lies. It started with whispers, the kind that slithered through rooms like smoke and pretended to be concern. Grandma Rose's birthday week had barely begun, and already the house was buzzing with relatives. The laughter was loud, the perfume stronger, and the fake smiles sharper than ever. I tried to blend in, moving through the crowd with a polite nod, pretending not to notice the side glances or the half-said sentences that trailed off when I entered a room. "Poor Emma," I heard Aunt Carol say once, her voice dripping with pity and poison.
"Still hasn't recovered from that breakup."
Such a shame, and just before the engagement, too. I froze in the hallway, clutching the tray of glasses in my hands. They trembled slightly, but I steadied them before walking in. Aunt Carol smiled when she saw me, that kind of smile that says I know something you don't want me to say out loud. "Oh, sweetheart," she chirped. "We were just talking about how strong you've been since Ryan, you know."
I forced a polite smile.
"Since he left, you mean?" Her smile faltered for a split second. She wasn't expecting honesty. "Yes, dear. But everything happens for a reason." "Right," I said quietly, like secrets do. The silence that followed was so tight, it felt like it could snap. From the corner of my eye, I saw my mother standing by the staircase, her face pale with warning. Later, she pulled me aside, her nails digging into my wrist. "Don't you dare start anything, Emma," she hissed under her breath. "People are watching." I looked at her, stunned. She was mocking me, Mom. "And you just proved her right," she snapped.
"You sounded bitter. Desperate. You think people respect that?"
Her words burned worse than the insult itself.
I didn't answer. There was no point.
Every time I tried to defend myself, she made me feel like I was embarrassing the family, as if my pain was a public stain. That evening, I walked past the backyard where the younger cousins played music and laughed. Sophia sat on the patio, shining like a diamond in the warm light, her hair perfect, her smile brighter than the string lights above her. And beside her, laughing softly, was Ryan. Ryan. My ex.
He shouldn't have been there. He wasn't family anymore.
But there he was, with his hand resting too comfortably on Sophia's chair. I froze in the doorway, trying to make sense of it. My mother's voice carried from the kitchen, sweet and practiced. "Oh Ryan, we're so glad you came. You've always been part of this family." That word, always, twisted like a knife. When Ryan turned and met my eyes, his smile faltered. Just for a second. Then he nodded politely, as if I was some distant acquaintance. The humiliation hit me like heat rushing to my face.
I walked away before my tears could betray me.
Later that night, I overheard them talking. My mother and Aunt Carol again, whispering near the staircase. "She still doesn't know," Aunt Carol said softly. "She doesn't need to," Mom replied. "Sophia makes him happy. Emma would have only embarrassed him. I'm doing her a favor."
My knees almost gave out.
I pressed my hand against the wall to steady myself. They weren't just defending Sophia, they were rewriting my story, turning me into the mistake, the failure, the girl who couldn't hold a man's respect. When I walked into the kitchen the next morning, Sophia was already there, humming while making coffee. She looked up at me, her smile polite but sharp. "Morning," she said. "You look tired. Big night." "Not as big as yours," I replied, my tone even. Her eyes flickered. She knew I'd seen them. "Look, Emma, I didn't plan this. Ryan just realized we connect differently." "Differently," I repeated, tasting the word like poison. "You mean conveniently?" She shrugged. "Mom just wants everyone happy. You should too." I laughed, low, bitter, broken. Mom doesn't want everyone happy. She just wants everyone to look perfect.
Sophia's smile vanished.
You're being unfair. And you're being her, I whispered. Before she could reply, Mom entered. Girls, she said sweetly, don't start drama today. The photographers arrive at 5.
Photographers?
For Grandma's family legacy portraits. I almost laughed. What a perfect time to hide behind a camera lens.
All day, I watched them prepare.
My mother adjusting decorations, Sophia choosing the right dress, Ryan helping with the setup as if he belonged. I felt like a ghost moving among strangers who shared my last name. That evening, while searching for the speech notes I'd left on the dining table, I found a letter tucked under my folder, sealed, but my name scrawled in Ryan's handwriting.
My pulse quickened as I opened it. Inside was a note.
Emma, I hope you understand. It's what your mother wanted.
She said it was best for everyone. I didn't mean to hurt you.
I read it twice, my hands shaking harder each time.
He hadn't left because of me.
He left for her, because my mother told him to. My mother had traded my love for her reputation. When I looked up, she was standing at the doorway, watching me read. Her face was calm, proud even. I told you, she said quietly, not every truth deserves to be told. That's when I realized she wasn't ashamed of what she did.
She was ashamed that I might expose it. I folded the letter carefully and looked her straight in the eyes.
You're right, I whispered. Some truths aren't meant to be told.
I smiled, the same kind of smile she used to wear.
Some are meant to be shown. And that's when I decided, the next time I held a microphone, it wouldn't be for Grandma's birthday speech. It would be for the reckoning this family had been running from.
Because this time, I wasn't going to stay silent.
It's strange how pain changes shape when you hide it long enough. At first, it's quiet, like a bruise you can cover. But eventually, it starts to breathe on its own. By the time the reunion day arrived, I had learned how to wear silence like jewelry. I smiled when expected, nodded when spoken to, and floated through the house as if I belonged. But inside, something dark was stirring, the kind of anger that doesn't explode.
It waits. The morning was chaos.
Relatives filled every corner of the house. Aunt Carol's laughter echoed from the kitchen, Grandma's voice carried through the hallway, and Sophia, of course, was the center of it all. She stood at the staircase, radiant in her silver dress, greeting everyone with perfect poise. My mother watched her with a kind of pride I had once prayed for. Doesn't she look stunning? Linda said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Sophia really is the heart of this family. I stood behind them, holding a tray of drinks, invisible again. Someone murmured, poor Emma, she never quite got her mother's grace. I pretended not to hear. When I went to place the tray down, Sophia turned and smiled, that sharp, polished smile that said, stay in your place.
Careful, sis, she said softly.
You wouldn't want to spill anything, again.
Laughter followed.
I froze for half a second before forcing a laugh of my own. Don't worry, I said, steadying the glasses. I'm used to cleaning up messes that aren't mine.
The laughter died instantly.
My mother's eyes cut through me like a warning knife. Emma, she said, her voice calm but loaded, why don't you help in the kitchen instead? Leave the serving to someone else.
My chest tightened. The serving?
That was exactly what I'd been doing for them my whole life, serving their image, their comfort, their lies.
But I said nothing.
Later, during the group photo session, the photographer called out, family, gather close. Everyone lined up, Mom in the center, Dad behind her, Sophia standing tall beside Ryan. I approached quietly, trying to take a spot near the edge. Before I could settle, Mom waved her hand dismissively. Emma, dear, could you stand behind us? You're blocking Sophia's light.
Blocking Sophia's light. It was the kind of phrase that sounded harmless, but it hollowed me out.
I stepped back obediently as the flash went off, the image of my mother and sister frozen in brilliance while I blurred into the background. The laughter resumed after the photo, music filling the room. I went out to the patio to breathe. The cold air helped me keep the tears in check. My father found me there, leaning against the railing. You shouldn't take it personally, he said quietly. Your mother just cares too much about presentation.
I turned to him, eyes stinging. About presentation, yes. About me?
Not even a little. He sighed, looking away. It's easier not to fight her, Emma. You'll understand one day.
I shook my head. No, Dad. That's the problem.
Everyone understands her, but no one sees me. Before he could respond, my mother's voice echoed from inside, sharp and impatient.
Emma, stop hiding.
Grandma's waiting for the toast.
The toast. The speech.
I walked back in, clutching the note cards I'd written. Polite, safe words about family and unity.
The very words she wanted to hear.
But as I stood there watching Sophia glide between guests, laughing with Ryan, my throat tightened.
Grandma raised her glass.
My wonderful family, she said, smiling proudly. I'm blessed to see our legacy shine through my daughters and granddaughters. Especially Sophia, such grace and promise.
Everyone clapped. Except me.
I stood beside my mother, who whispered, Don't just stand there. Smile, for God's sake. And then, for the first time, I didn't.
I just stared at her. Calm.
Empty.
She frowned.
What's wrong with you?
I turned to her slowly.
I just realized. I don't belong in this picture anymore. Before she could reply, Aunt Carol approached, glass in hand.
Linda, dear, she said with a smirk, you must be so proud.
Sophia and Ryan make such a lovely pair. When's the big announcement?
I felt my stomach drop.
My mother froze. Then she smiled, that same mask of control, and said, Soon. Very soon. Every sound in the room faded.
My world narrowed to those two words.
Very soon. Ryan looked away.
Sophia's cheeks flushed. Everyone else cheered. I could barely breathe.
My mother didn't even look at me, she just kept smiling for the crowd. Mom, I whispered, my voice cracking. What did you just say? She turned to me, still smiling.
Don't start, Emma. Not here. Something inside me fractured. I could hear my pulse in my ears, feel my hands trembling.
You told him to leave me, I said under my breath. You took him from me, and now you're proud of it. Her smile didn't falter. Lower your voice, she hissed. Don't embarrass yourself. I laughed, low and broken. No, Mom. You've done enough of that for both of us. Gasps rippled around us, heads turning, whispers forming. My mother's eyes widened, not from guilt, but from fear of exposure.
Apologize, she ordered quietly. Apologize.
I repeated, my voice shaking. For what? For existing. The silence that followed was unbearable.
My grandmother's glass trembled in her hand. My father's face paled.
My mother took a step forward, voice sharp. Enough. You're ruining this family's evening. I stared at her, tears finally spilling. No, Mom. I'm just finally telling the truth.
The room fell silent again.
I turned and walked out, into the night air, the cool wind biting against my skin. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I felt awake. As I stood under the porch light, my fingers brushed against the folded letter in my pocket, Ryan's letter.
The truth written in his handwriting.
And then it hit me, the speech.
Tomorrow. The microphone.
The guests. The perfect audience. A slow, calm resolve filled my chest. I wiped my tears and whispered to myself. This time, they'll hear me. Because the next day wasn't going to be Grandma's celebration anymore. It was going to be my mother's reckoning. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because of the shouting, or the whispers, or the sound of my mother's heels pacing outside my door, but because silence finally felt heavier than anything I'd ever carried. I sat on my bed, the folded letter from Ryan clutched in my hands, the ink already smudged by my tears. Every word felt like a confession and a curse. Your mother said it was best for everyone. Best for everyone, except me. The house was dark, but through the thin walls, I could still hear them talking. My mother, Sophia, and Aunt Carol. Their voices were muffled, but the laughter wasn't. It had that sharp, cruel edge that always came when the topic was me. I crept closer to the door and listened. She's so dramatic, Sophia said. You'd think losing Ryan was the end of the world. She'll recover, Aunt Carol replied, her tone light. She always does, just slower than normal people. Then came my mother's voice, calm, cold, proud. I warned her. She doesn't know how to protect this family's name. Every time she opens her mouth, she risks everything I've built. Everything she's built. I pressed my hand against my mouth to keep from crying out. That was the moment I realized something. My mother didn't just want control. She wanted erasure. She wanted me gone, completely invisible, so her version of the family would shine without flaw. The next morning, the reunion resumed as if nothing had happened. The decorations were refreshed, the music cheerful, and the guests blissfully unaware of the storm beneath the surface. I walked downstairs, pale and hollow, but no one looked twice.
My father nodded stiffly.
"Try not to make things worse," he murmured as he passed by. "Make things worse." As if I hadn't already been living in their version of worse my whole life. At noon, my mother gathered everyone for a private family announcement. Her tone was so formal that even the chatter fell silent. We stood in the living room, sunlight streaming through the tall windows, dust floating like secrets in the air. She clasped her hands together and smiled graciously. "I want to thank everyone for being here today to celebrate my mother's legacy. This family means everything to me, and as we move forward, I believe it's time to discuss the next generation."
My pulse quickened. She looked at Grandma Rose, who nodded approvingly.
Then her gaze drifted toward Sophia, radiant, polished, holding Ryan's hand. "As you all know," Mom continued, "Sophia has been an extraordinary support to this family. She's taken on responsibilities far beyond her years. And so, after many discussions with Mother, we've decided to name her as the inheritor of the Blake estate."
The words landed like thunder.
I blinked, waiting for her to add along with Emma or as she shares with her sister.
But she didn't. Not once.
The applause started, hesitant, confused. People smiled, clapping politely. Sophia blushed, pretending to be surprised, while Ryan squeezed her hand. I stood frozen, my breath caught in my throat. "Mom,"
I whispered, my voice barely audible.
"What about me?" Her eyes flicked to me, cold, impatient. "Emma, this isn't the time."
"No," I said, louder this time.
"You said we'd talk about it after the celebration. You said there was something for me too." She sighed, the kind of sigh meant to humiliate.
"Emma, please don't do this now.
Let's be gracious."
I felt my chest tighten, heat crawling up my neck.
"Gracious?"
I whispered.
"You just disinherited me in front of everyone."
The room fell quiet. Aunt Carol set down her glass.
Sophia looked away. My grandmother's lips pressed into a thin line. My mother gave that same smile, calm, unbothered. "You've never cared for the estate, Emma. You've always preferred simplicity."
The word hit like an insult.
"I never cared because you never let me belong to it." I snapped, my voice shaking. "You made sure I was always on the outside, the help, the embarrassment, the one to be fixed or hidden." My mother's eyes blazed, but she didn't lose control.
"Enough," she said quietly.
"You're making a fool of yourself."
I felt something break.
My hands trembled, my throat burned. For years I'd bitten my tongue, swallowed my truth, played the part of the obedient daughter, all for this family's so-called dignity. And now, standing in a room full of people who had watched me grow, I realized I was being erased completely. "Say it," I whispered, stepping closer.
"Say you never wanted me. Say you'd rather I didn't exist."
Her lips parted slightly, not from guilt, but from the horror that I might say more.
"Emma, you're unstable," she said finally.
"Go to your room." The guests shifted uncomfortably.
Some pretended to check their phones. Others stared, wide-eyed.
"Unstable,"
I repeated softly.
"You ruin my engagement, humiliate me in front of everyone, and now you're calling me unstable."
Ryan took a step forward.
"Emma, maybe you should." "Don't," I said sharply, my voice cutting through the room.
"You don't get to talk to me."
"You gave up that right the day you believed her." He lowered his head, saying nothing. My mother turned to the crowd, smiling again.
"I'm sorry, everyone. She's emotional. It's been a hard year for her."
Laughter rippled uncomfortably through the room. That was the final cut, the public humiliation, the dismissal, the label of emotional.
I wasn't the daughter anymore.
I was the family's stain, their shame to be managed. My legs felt weak, but I forced myself to stand tall. The tears that had threatened to fall all morning finally did, but not from sorrow.
From something deeper. Rage. Not the kind that screams or destroys.
The quiet kind, the kind that burns beneath the ribs and whispers, "Enough."
I walked out without another word.
Through the hallway, past the portraits of ancestors who would have been proud of their perfect descendants. My reflection flashed in every frame, a ghost in my own house. In my room, I tore off the pearl necklace my mother had given me, a symbol of grace, she'd called it. The string snapped, beads scattering across the floor like tiny white lies. I collapsed on the edge of the bed, gasping. For the first time in years, I let the sobs come, raw, shaking, ugly. Every memory flashed before me, her cold smiles, her whispered corrections, her refusal to ever say I'm proud of you. And then, just like that, the crying stopped. I stared at the mirror, red-eyed, exhausted, and something inside me shifted. I realized I had nothing left to lose. No inheritance. No love. No place. But I still had truth. And truth, when spoken at the right moment, has a way of burning through even the prettiest lies. My eyes fell on the note cards for my safe speech, still lying on the desk. Beneath them, the letter from Ryan peeked out like a buried weapon. I picked it up, folded it carefully, and slipped it into my dress pocket. The next morning, I would stand on that stage, microphone in hand, in front of every person who ever believed my silence was weakness. And I would show them that respect built on humiliation isn't respect at all, it's fear. As I turned off the light, one final thought echoed in my head. They've taken everything from me but my voice. And tomorrow, that voice would finally be heard. Because my mother was right about one thing, I would embarrass them all. After the letter, something inside me stopped asking permission. The house had stripped me of everything it could, love, legacy, a name that used to sound like home. But it hadn't taken my voice. That's where I started. Quietly. Deliberately. I spent the night awake, listening to the house breathe. By dawn I had a plan that felt like a cold, steady heartbeat. It wasn't about breaking people physically or shaming for the sake of cruelty. It was about returning what they'd stolen. Honesty, dignity, the right to my own story. I would expose the rot at the center of that smiling picture and make sure the world saw exactly who had fed on me. First, I gathered proof. The letter from Ryan was the key, his handwriting, the admission that my mother had orchestrated the break. I taped it into my notebook and made copies with my phone, photographing each page until the pixels blurred into truth. Then I found other crumbs, old text messages where Ryan apologized for doing what was expected, an email from Aunt Carol congratulating Mom on handling the situation, and a string of receipts that suggested favors and hush money had changed hands. Each piece fit into a pattern I'd long felt but never seen laid bare. I realized this would be more than a speech. Words alone could be smoothed over by a practiced smile. So I turned it into a performance of truth, precise, public, undeniable. I would speak, but I would also show. I printed copies of messages, arranged them into a slim booklet, and tucked extra copies into the envelope I planned to hand to the photographer and Grandma's close friends, people who would not let it disappear into gossip. I made sure the copies had dates, screenshots, little things that made them harder to dismiss. Uncle David, the quiet man who'd always watched from the edges, became my first ally. He didn't say much, he never did, but the look he gave me the day after I was disinherited said more than words. "You're not alone," he whispered when we were alone in the study. "Say it the right way. Don't let them gaslight you." I nodded, grateful for one steady presence in a house full of mirrors. Next, I sharpened my delivery. I practiced in the bathroom mirror until my voice stopped trembling. I wrote the speech like carving, each sentence deliberate, each pause timed to let the room inhale and feel the weight of what I'd say. I rehearsed the moment I'd slide the letter into my pocket and pull out the printed proof. I rehearsed how I'd keep my face calm while the world shifted. My revenge had to be calm, furious but composed, like ice that doesn't melt under heat. I also prepared for the fallout. Revenge is dangerous not because it risks their comfort, but because it risks you. I packed a small bag with essentials, a change of clothes, the notebook with copies, my ID, and a phone charged and ready to call Uncle David if things went wrong. I texted a friend who lived nearby, not to beg for rescue, but to have someone who could verify my story publicly if the family tried to spin it. "If it gets ugly, post the pictures," I wrote. She replied with a single emoji and the word, "Done." That made the plan feel real. There was a line I kept repeating in my head. They taught me that silence was respect. I'll teach them what respect really costs. It steadied me. I cut my nails shorter that week, a stupid, small thing, but every tiny preparation made me feel less like the frightened girl I'd been and more like the woman who would finish what she started. Still, the plan carried risk. If I failed, I'd be cast out irrevocably. They could call me unstable, delusional, a liar. They could rally the family and claim I'd fabricated everything for attention.
That fear lived at the back of my throat like a bitter taste. But fear is not the same as refusal.
I had nothing left to lose, and everything to reclaim. On the night before the toast, I folded the copied pages and slid them into the inside pocket of my dress. I put on a simple black dress, something that wouldn't distract from my words, but wouldn't let me disappear either. I practiced one last time in the hallway where the family portraits hung, stepping between generations of painted faces who'd look down on me with judgment. Tomorrow, I told my reflection, soft and steady, you stop apologizing. I placed my hand on the door knob, feeling the cool metal under my palm. The house behind it was waiting, full of people who had once called me daughter. Ahead of me was a room full of witnesses and a microphone that would decide whether my truth remained a whisper or became a verdict. I inhaled. I could taste iron on my tongue, the same taste I'd come to know when my blood felt hotter with resolve than with pain. Then I stepped into the light, my notebook tucked tight, the copies folded like small, dangerous promises. The house seemed to hold its breath with me. The microphone waited. The ballroom lights were soft and golden, but everything inside me felt cold and sharp. Crystal glasses rang, cameras clicked, and the band played a gentle melody that made lies sound elegant. Grandma Rose sat at the head table in a silver shawl, beaming at her guests. My mother stood near the stage, flawless as ever. Sophia glowed beside Ryan, her hand looped through his arm like she owned the future. The MC tapped the mic. We'll now invite Emma Blake to share a short tribute to her grandmother.
A polite applause.
My name tasted different tonight, not small, not apologetic. I walked up the steps, slow and steady, the copies and the letter pressed against my ribs like a second heartbeat. I faced them, my family, my house of mirrors. The microphone felt warm in my hand. Good evening, I said. My voice didn't shake. I was asked to keep this simple and respectful. I will. I looked at Grandma. I love you. You taught me that respect isn't a costume. It's the truth you wear when no one is watching. A hush fell over the room. My mother smiled, relieved, too soon. I took a breath. So I owe you the truth tonight. A ripple went through the crowd. My mother's face shifted a few millimeters, a tiny crack in perfect porcelain. I was told my voice embarrasses this family, I continued. I was told to be quiet, to be safe, to smile while I was being ruined. But silence is not respect. It is fear. And I'm done being afraid. My mother stepped toward the stage, smile stretched too tight. Emma, she called, gentle and warning, let's keep this sweet. I lifted a hand. No, Mother. You've had the microphone all my life. I turned back to the guests. Here is my truth. I pulled the folded paper from my pocket and held it up. This is a letter from Ryan. I felt the room tighten. In it, he writes, your mother said it was best for everyone. I didn't mean to hurt you. A gasp, low and sharp. Ryan closed his eyes. Sophia's lips parted. I laid the letter on the podium. He left me because my mother asked him to. To protect her image. To replace me with someone she could control. Lies, Aunt Carol blurted, her voice too loud. Don't be dramatic, Emma. I held up a second sheet. A printout, date stamped. This is an email from Aunt Carol to my mother. You handled it perfectly. She'll cry and then move on. Sophia and Ryan are a better fit for the family. The silence snapped like a thread. Heads turned. Phones lifted. The band stopped mid-note. My mother's voice went cold. Shut this down. I looked straight at her. No. I breathed in, feeling the room flood with heat. You disinherited me yesterday, I said, steady. You announced it like I wasn't standing there. You erased me so the picture would look clean. Grandma Rosie's shawl slid from her shoulder. Linda, she whispered, tell me this isn't true. My mother faced her, polished and pale. Mother, you know I only protect our respect. I lifted another page. Is this respect? I asked. Text messages where Ryan apologizes for doing what was expected. Receipts for favors to keep the secret quiet? A plan to shut down my voice before it could speak. I spread the papers across the podium like cards. Respect built on a secret is not respect. It is control. Sophia pushed forward, shaking.
You don't understand, Emma. I understand perfectly, I said.
You wanted what was mine because it was easier than facing the truth.
You were the golden child. And you were hungry.
Her eyes filled. For a second, I almost felt sorry. Then I remembered the patio laughter, the ring that never reached my finger, the years of being told I was too much and somehow never enough.
Ryan tried to approach the stage.
Emma, please.
I turned the mic toward him. Say it. Tell them she asked you to leave me.
He looked at my mother, then at Sophia, then at me.
His shoulders fell.
She wanted what was best for the family, he said softly. The room erupted. Whispers, gasps, the scrape of chairs. Grandma Rose stood with effort, her voice thin but firm. Best for the family? At the cost of a granddaughter's dignity.
For the first time, I saw my mother falter. Her mask slipped.
I did what I had to do, she said, breath quick and clipped.
Emma is sensitive. She would have embarrassed us.
I saved her.
I leaned into the mic, quiet and clear. You didn't save me. You destroyed me.
You ruined my home and called it respect. Someone in the back said, let the girl speak. The sea of faces lifted toward me like a jury that had been waiting. I straightened the papers with calm hands. I'm not here to fight. I'm here to end the performance. To return what you stole with a smile. I nodded to the photographer, who had been frozen at the edge of the stage. Sir, would you please pass these to every table? I held up a slim stack of copies. He hesitated, then took them. Within moments, pages moved like white birds across the room, proof traveling faster than denial.
My mother surged forward.
Emma, stop this right now.
Or what?
I asked, still soft. You'll call me unstable? You'll erase me again. I stepped back from the mic and let the pages do their work, eyes scanning, mouths tightening, the truth becoming communal.
Uncle David rose from his seat.
She's telling the truth, he said.
I asked questions. I saw pieces.
I was too afraid to say anything. That's on me.
My father looked like a man who'd fallen through thin ice.
Linda, he said finally, did you tell him to leave our daughter?
She stared at him.
I told him what Emma could not accept, that she would embarrass us.
That she never knew when to stop. I felt the room tilt. It wasn't my shame anymore.
It belonged to the woman who had curated me into nothing. I placed both hands on the podium, steady.
This is not about ruining a party, I said. This is about ending a rule. I am not your flaw.
I am your daughter, and you taught me that truth is dangerous. Tonight, I make it safe. Grandma Rose sank into her chair, eyes wet. Emma, she whispered, I didn't know.
I softened.
I know, Grandma. Then I turned, and for the first time, I faced my mother without fear. You said I'd embarrass you, I murmured, and my voice filled the room like quiet thunder. Tonight, I exposed you. She opened her mouth, but no words came.
The music had stopped.
The cameras were still. The house was listening to me. I lifted the letter one last time and folded it slowly, the paper crisp in the quiet.
This is the end of my silence, I said.
And the beginning of my respect.
I stepped away from the microphone. The room didn't clap. It breathed. It shifted. It understood.
As I left the stage, my mother took one step after me, and stopped. The space between us felt final, like a door closing in soft light.
Justice didn't explode.
It settled, like dust after a storm, revealing the shapes underneath. I walked past Sophia, who looked small for the first time, and past Ryan, who stared at the floor like truth had burned holes in his shoes. At the exit, I paused and looked back at the family that once swallowed me whole.
No one was smiling.
And for the first time in my life, that felt like peace. The music never started again. By the time I stepped out into the cool night, the golden lights from the ballroom windows had dimmed to a tired flicker. Behind those glass walls, my family, my past, sat stunned in their silence, their masks cracked open. I could almost hear the faint murmur of confusion and shame as the truth settled like dust on a room too long polished with lies. Outside, the air was still. The driveway glistened from a recent drizzle, reflecting the mansion's lights in soft, trembling ripples. For the first time, I wasn't trembling with them. I stood alone, yet lighter than I'd ever felt. Uncle David found me near the gate. His expression was quiet, a mix of sorrow and pride.
You did it, he said softly. I smiled faintly.
No, I replied, my voice steady. I just stopped pretending.
He nodded.
They'll never forget tonight.
I don't want them to, I said.
I just want them to remember who I really am. He reached out and squeezed my shoulder once before walking back toward the house, leaving me in the calm hum of the night. When I finally looked back at the mansion, I saw movement by the door. Sophia standing alone, eyes swollen, her silver dress no longer shimmering under the porch light. For a second, she looked like the child I used to share secrets with, not the rival who'd inherited my silence. She hesitated, then whispered, "Emma, I didn't mean."
I held up a hand gently.
"You didn't have to mean it,"
I said. "You just had to stop it. But you didn't."
She bit her lip, tears falling quietly. "Mom's furious." I gave a small, tired smile. "Let her be.
She built her throne on a secret. I just pulled the curtain."
Sophia looked down, guilt and fear tangled on her face. "What will you do now?"
"I'll live," I said simply.
Something she never taught me how to do. I turned and walked toward the gates. Behind me, the Blake house loomed like a stage after the play has ended, lights fading, characters scattered, truth echoing through the empty seats.
The following days moved slowly.
The family's silence became its own punishment.
The calls stopped. The gossip quieted.
People who had once looked at me with polite pity now looked with something else, respect, maybe, or fear of their own reflection. News of that night spread faster than I expected. Aunt Carol avoided me completely. Ryan left town with a reputation he couldn't charm away. And my mother, she didn't call. Not once. But I knew her silence wasn't victory, it was surrender. Because for the first time, she couldn't control the story. I moved into a small apartment on the edge of town, nothing glamorous, but mine. The walls didn't whisper judgment, and the air didn't smell like expectation. I painted the living room pale blue and filled it with the kind of quiet I could finally breathe in. Some nights, I still replayed that evening in my mind. The gasps, the stares, the sound of truth cracking marble. And though part of me ached for the love I never got, another part of me finally understood something deeper. Respect earned by silence was never respect at all. One evening, I found myself standing by the window, watching the rain slide down the glass. My reflection looked older, calmer. The pain was still there, but it no longer controlled me. It had become something else, proof that I had survived being invisible. I whispered into the quiet, half to myself. They took away my place in the family. But they can't take away my place in the truth. That line stayed with me, not as bitterness, but as clarity. I started writing, not revenge stories, but truth-telling ones.
About women who were told to be quiet. About daughters who dared to speak.
Each word became a piece of armor, each story a way to make sure my silence had meaning. Months later, I received a letter, my father's handwriting.
It was short.
"Your mother's been quiet since that night.
She reads the news about you. She doesn't say much, but she keeps your picture on the piano.
I think she finally sees you." I folded the letter and smiled, not from triumph, but peace. Some truths don't destroy people. They just set them free in painful, necessary ways. That night, as I blew out the candle by my bedside, I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who whispered apologies to walls, who mistook obedience for love.
She died in that ballroom.
And in her place, someone stronger was born. Not angry, not vengeful, just unafraid. Because revenge, I realized, wasn't the act of destruction. It was the act of becoming.